If you're listening to this at home right now, with your door locked and your curtains drawn, there's a good chance you think you're safe. You can hear your neighbors through the wall sometimes, their TV, their arguments, their late-night phone calls. Maybe you nod to them in the stairwell, share an elevator ride, borrow sugar or a drill when you need it. They're part of the background of your life, so familiar you don't even see them anymore. These 5 stories came from people who thought the exact same thing, until they found out, in ways they can't forget, that home doesn't mean what you think it does when the danger lives just one wall, one ceiling, one shared lobby away. The first story is from a guy I'll call Samir. When this happened, he was 25, working his first real job in a new city. To save money and feel a little more grown up, he rented a 1-bedroom apartment in an aging but decent building. 6 floors, no lift, balconies on one side, a narrow alley on the other. The kind of place with peeling paint, but a surprisingly low crime rate and neighbors who left their shoes outside. His nearest neighbor was a man named Bakshi, living in the flat directly opposite his on the same floor. Mid-50s, retired bank employee, always in a pressed shirt even at home. The first day Samir moved in, struggling with cardboard boxes, Bakshi appeared in the doorway with a set of spare plates and a jug of water. "First day is always chaos," he smiled. "You forget to unpack the kitchen. Take these." Samir's parents had raised him on stories about helpful uncles in old neighborhoods who kept an eye on everyone's kids. To him, Bakshi just looked like the modern version of that. They started talking. Within a week, it was normal for Bakshi to knock in the evenings with leftover sabzi, or for Samir to drop by and ask how to work the building's temperamental water pump. About a month in, Bakshi made a suggestion Samir didn't even think twice about at the time. "You live alone," he said, leaning on the railing, city lights flickering far below. "These doors, they lock from outside, but the latch is old. If you ever lock yourself out, who will you call at midnight? Why don't you leave one set of keys with me? Even my son did that when he lived in the hostel." Samir hesitated for half a second. His parents' voices in his head said, "Always trust the neighbor uncle." He smiled. "That makes sense, actually." He handed over his spare keys. The first strange thing happened 2 weeks later. He woke up one night with the vague, skin-prickling feeling that someone had just been in the room. You know that leftover sensation, like the air hasn't settled yet after a presence? The curtains were still. The fan hummed overhead. His phone, charging on the bedside table, showed 3:17 a.m. He laughed at himself, rolled over, and went back to sleep. The next morning, though, he noticed his bedroom door was half open. He was almost sure he'd shut it before sleeping. Almost. It was easy to blame grogginess. Little things piled up after that. Never enough to sound like horror, always enough to make him pause. His toothbrush moved to the other side of the sink. A glass he swore he'd washed was in the drying rack, still faintly wet. Once, the TV remote he kept on his coffee table turned up on the arm of the sofa instead. "I'm just messy," he told himself. "I do things on autopilot." Then he came home early from work one day. There had been a water leak in the office, power cut. Everyone sent home at 4 p.m. Samir's own habit was to reach his floor, walk straight to his door, fish for his keys automatically. On that day, halfway up the stairs, he remembered with a small stab of annoyance that he'd left his keys on his desk. He'd been in a rush during the evacuation. He prepared himself for the embarrassment of asking Bakshi to let him into his own flat, like a teenager who'd forgotten his copy of the house key. But when he turned the corner onto his floor, he froze. His apartment door was already open. Just a crack, 2 fingers wide, but definitely not locked, not latched, not how he'd left it. Every hair on his arm stood up. He told himself he must have left it like that morning. We all do stupid things half asleep, right? Maybe the cleaning lady had come, though he hadn't given her a schedule yet. The corridor was silent. Bakshi's door was closed. He nudged his own door open with his foot. "Hello," he called into the dim hallway. "Anyone here?" Silence. His living room looked normal. Shoes by the door, TV off, balcony door shut. He did a quick sweep of the apartment, heart thudding. Kitchen, empty. Bathroom, empty. Bedroom. The bed rumpled from that morning, wardrobe shut, window locked from inside. On his bedside table, though, next to his phone charger, was something that made his skin go cold. It was a printed photo. A real, glossy 4x6 print, like something from an old album. The picture was of him, asleep, lying exactly where he was standing now. His face relaxed in sleep, one arm above his head, mouth slightly open. The angle was slightly above and to the left, like it had been taken from the doorway. He stared at it, so long his vision blurred. The edges of the world narrowed to his own unfocused face in the picture. He had never, in his life, printed a photograph of himself sleeping. His immediate thought was, did I ever take a weird selfie and print it for a joke? Did someone send this as a prank? His brain grasped for any explanation that didn't involve the obvious. Then he noticed the faint reflection in the glossy surface. At the very edge, in the darkness behind his sleeping form, there was a sliver of something. A doorframe. The silhouette of someone standing just outside it. His stomach lurched. He knew exactly who had a key. Samir didn't remember putting the photo down. 1 second it was in his hand. The next, it was on the bedside table again, and he was in the corridor, banging on Bakshi's door hard enough to sting his knuckles. It opened a few seconds later. Bakshi blinked at him, surprise flickering across his lined face, then concern. Samir Beta, what happened? You look like you saw a ghost. Samir's mouth was dry. A dozen accusations crowded his tongue and died there. How do you say, have you been standing over my bed at night taking pictures of me? To a man who has lent you salt and stories and called you Beta for a month. Did you come into my flat today? He managed. Bakshi frowned. No. Why? Door problem again. You forgot keys. Samir studied his eyes. They were clear, mildly puzzled. If this was an act, it was a very good one. My door was open, Samir said slowly. And someone has been moving things. So I thought maybe the maid. Oh, that Kamla. Bakshi shook his head. She is careless. I told you, don't give keys to everyone. I didn't. He heard the snap in his own voice and saw Bakshi's smile falter. He forced himself to soften it. It's fine. Maybe I forgot to close it properly. Bakshi tooted sympathetically. Working boys today, so tired, always on phone, he said. Come, I make tea, you calm down. Don't worry. Here, your keys. He patted his pocket. Safe with me. That night, Samir pushed his bed against the far wall. Away from the door, he shoved a chair under the handle. He checked the latch 3 times. Still, sleep came in thin, nervous patches. At 2 a.m., he sat bolt upright, pulse booming in his ears. The room was dark. The chair was still jammed under the handle. The door was still closed. But the photo that had been on his bedside table at 4 p.m. was now on his chest, face down, as if someone had placed it there very gently. He didn't scream. The sound got stuck somewhere between his heart and his throat. Very slowly, he picked the photo up, turned it over. It was a different angle this time. Closer. His own eyelids in detail, the tiny crease at the side of his mouth, the stubble on his jaw. Whoever had taken it had been inches from his face. He didn't sleep after that. The next morning, he took sick leave and went straight to an electronics shop. By afternoon, he had a small Wi-Fi camera disguised as a wall clock mounted in his bedroom, lens pointed at the door. He didn't care if it was paranoid. He needed to know. That night, he pretended to sleep. He lay in bed in the same position as in the photographs, breathing slow and even, the photo hidden under his pillow, phone recording app running silently beside him. The apartment settled around him, the usual creaks and groans of old pipes. Somewhere a dog barked. A bike roared past on the street below. At 2:41 a.m., he heard it, the tiniest scrape of metal in the lock, the faintest click of a key turning. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to move, to jump up, to shout. He kept still. The latch eased back. The door slid open a few centimeters, pushing the chair forward with a soft grating sound. Light from the corridor spilled in, a thin line. A shape entered. Slow, careful. The familiar outline of a man in a pressed shirt, hair neatly combed even at 2:40 in the morning. Bakshi stood in his doorway, breathing softly. He didn't switch on the light. He just stood there, watching the bed. Samir could feel the weight of his gaze on his face like a touch. After a moment, the older man moved closer. One step, then another. The floorboard near the foot of the bed creaked, just as it always did. He paused, then continued, shoes removed, walking in socks. He came to the side of the bed and leaned over. Samir smelled his aftershave, that faint citrus and talc scent he'd noticed in the staircase. Heard the whisper of fabric as he raised something. His phone, held with the screen dimmed low. The shutter sound was off, but Samir could practically hear the click in his mind. Bakshi took 2, 3 photos from different angles. He straightened, and for a second, Samir thought it was over. Then a hand came down, very gently, and brushed a strand of hair away from his forehead. The touch was light, almost fatherly, chilling in the dark. "You sleep so heavily." "Back," she whispered, voice so low it was almost inaudible. "Not safe, Beta. World is not safe." There was a strange affection in it. Possessive. He stayed there a moment longer, then turned and padded out, pulling the door softly closed behind him. Samir lay frozen until dawn. The next day, he didn't confront him. He didn't demand explanations. He took the clock camera footage, copied it to 3 different places, sent one to a friend with a message. "If anything happens to me, it's him." Then he found another place to live and moved out before the week was over. Back she knocked twice during those days, once to ask why there were boxes in the hall, once to say, "At least have tea before going." Samir never opened the door. He slid the keys back under it in a sealed envelope the day he left. He still has the video. He says some nights, when he can't sleep, he watches it, not to punish himself for trusting, but to remind himself that sometimes the scariest neighbors are the ones who seem most helpful. Ria's anger curdled into something tighter. She slipped on her sandals and went upstairs. The moment she reached the landing outside their flat, the sound stopped. Just like that. No fading. No last scuff. Cut clean, as if someone had pressed mute on the ceiling. She stood there, heart pounding, staring at their plain brown door. A small nameplate read Arjun and Neha. A torn hung above it, unmoving in the still air. She pressed the doorbell. Silence. She rang again. And again. Nothing. No whisper of movement inside. No shadow under the door. A neighbor from the next flat peeped out, sleep ruffled. "Ria ji? Everything okay? Are Arjun and Neha home?" Ria asked. The neighbor frowned. "They went to Neha's parents' place 3 days ago. Wedding in the family." "What?" Ria looked back at the quiet door, at the ceiling under which she'd heard those frantic, invisible footsteps. She thought about the security camera showing an undisturbed hallway while her ceiling shook. When Arjun and Neha returned a week later, she asked casually if anyone had been in their flat while they were away. "Cleaner, maybe?" They exchanged a look. "No," Neha said slowly. "We locked and double-checked all windows." "What?" Ria never told them. She just started sleeping with earplugs, and a nagging feeling that sometimes a flat doesn't forget the people who lived there before the walls were repainted. The third story is quieter on the surface, but it stays under your skin. It came from an old man named Joseph, who stayed alone in a ground-floor unit of a small housing society after his wife passed away. His neighbor was a family of 4, husband, wife, 2 small daughters. They were good neighbors by every visible measure. They brought him food on festivals. The girls called him Dadu and showed him their report cards. When his blood pressure spiked one afternoon, it was the neighbor, Rajesh, who drove him to the clinic. So when Joseph started hearing crying through the shared bedroom wall at night, he tried for weeks to convince himself it was just one of the girls having nightmares. "Hi," choked sobs, muffled by a pillow. The low murmur of an adult voice, not soothing exactly, more like hissing. It went on for a month. Finally, one Sunday, he mentioned it gently to the mother, Ananya, when she brought over some leftover biryani. "The little one is crying a lot at night," he said. "Bad dreams. You should get her checked. Children feel things we don't." Ananya's smile went very still. "Which one?" she asked. "The younger, I think," he said. "Sound is very small." She swallowed, color draining from her face. "Both my girls sleep in my room," she said. "On the other side there is only the storeroom. Rajesh uses it sometimes for calls. Maybe you heard. TV." That night, the crying came again. Louder this time. Woven through it, for the first time, Joseph heard words. "Please don't," a small voice sobbed. "I'll be good. Please open the door." A man's voice murmured something, too low to make out. Something clinked, glass on glass. The crying rose in pitch, thin and desperate. Joseph stared at the wall, heart hammering. Every fiber of his being told him this was not a nightmare, not the TV. The next morning, he went to the society office, hands shaking as he signed a written complaint. "Noise disturbance," he wrote, because there was no official column for, "I think something bad is happening one wall away, but I can't see it." They called a meeting. They spoke to Rajesh and Ananya. Smile-heavy reassurances floated from their doorway like incense. "Kids play loudly. Uncle must have heard game. TV serials at night. Old people's ears are sensitive. 2 weeks later, the storeroom window in their flat was bricked up from the inside. The crying stopped. Joseph isn't sure which part haunts him more, the nights he heard it or the silence afterward. He moved to his son's house a year later. The family still lives there. Sometimes, he told me, he lies awake in his new room, miles away, and hears the thin echo of a child's voice through a wall that no longer exists. If that one made you look at your walls a little differently, the fourth story will make you think twice about every harmless glance your neighbor gives you when you step out to get the mail. This one came from a guy named Karthik, who lived in a row of identical rented houses on a narrow lane. The kind where your front doors practically face each other and there's nowhere to park except right in front, so everyone knows everyone's comings and goings. His opposite neighbor was a woman in her 30s, Mrs. Das. Schoolteacher. Widowed, the lane gossip said. Glasses, neatly tied hair. Always a soft good morning when they crossed paths. At first, Karthik barely registered her. She was part of the scenery, the lady watering plants at 7 a.m., the shadow behind the curtain when he came home late. Then he started noticing how often that shadow was there. At first, it was almost flattering. Every time he stepped out, to throw the trash, to answer a delivery boy's call, to lock his door in the morning, he'd feel eyes on him. He'd glance up, and there she'd be at her window, curtain drawn back 2 inches, pretending to adjust a pot or dust the sill. It escalated quickly. One evening, he came home around 9:30 p.m., tired, headphones in, scrolling his phone. As he bent to unlock his door, he sneezed. A second later, from across the lane, a voice said quietly, "Bless you, Karthik." He looked up. Her window was dark, curtain still. He hadn't told her his name. The next day, his landlady mentioned in passing, "Good, you're a decent boy, Beta. Last tenant, Mrs. Das complained so much. Said he came and went at odd hours, brought friends, very noisy. Poor fellow shifted out within 3 months." "Who?" Karthik asked. "Raghu, that IT chap lived here before you. Didn't they tell you?" That night, as he sat at his dining table eating, his phone lit up with a new WhatsApp message from an unknown number. "Long day at work? You look tired. Eat properly." No display picture. No name. Just that. His stomach dropped. 10 minutes earlier, he'd walked in with a plastic bag of food, too tired to cook. He typed, "Who is this?" No reply. When he stepped out to check his lock one last time, he looked up at her window. The curtain moved. A pale face flickered into view, then out, almost too fast to be sure. Over the next week, the messages came regularly. "Take an umbrella. Your light is on in the bedroom. Did you mean to leave it? You left your balcony door open. Be careful." He never replied. He never confirmed his number. But somehow, the messages always matched his actions within minutes. Once, on a Sunday morning, he stayed in bed scrolling till 11 a.m. A message popped up, "Such a lazy boy." That was the day he went to the mobile shop and changed his number. That night, no messages. No eyes at the window. At 2:15 a.m., his doorbell rang. Not the impatient, repeated jab of a delivery boy. A single long push. He lay in bed, frozen, listening to it vibrate through the metal. His call log showed no missed calls. No new messages on the new number. Slowly, he slid out of bed, padded to the door, and peered through the peephole. Empty lane. Dark. Mrs. Das's window. Black rectangle, curtain fully drawn. He almost turned back. Then, from just beyond the range of the peephole, a soft voice said, very close to the door, "I can't hear you breathing, Karthik." He didn't open it. The next morning, he called his landlady and said there was a personal family emergency. By the end of the week, he'd moved back in with his parents across town. He didn't wait for his deposit. 2 months later, a friend sent him a real estate listing for his old house. "Look, your lane is getting expensive," the friend joked. In the photos, his former front door stood open, sunlight streaming in. Across the lane, Mrs. Das's window was bricked up. "Neighbor lady got unwell," the friend messaged when Karthik asked. "Family took her away. Said she was watching people too much." He blocked the old, unknown number anyway. The fifth and last story is from someone who thought they'd escaped all of this by moving far away from shared walls and city lanes. Naveen and his wife bought a small house on the outskirts of town, the last one on a dead-end road. On one side, empty plot, overgrown with weeds. On the other, An older, slightly sagging house with a high boundary wall and a single neem tree whose branches hung over both properties. Their only real neighbor, there was an old man everyone called the. He lived alone in the sagging house. Rarely came out. Sometimes Naveen would see him standing by the tree at dusk, staring at the empty plot as if waiting for something to grow there. They introduced themselves once. The nodded, said, "Don't stay in the back room," and shuffled away before they could ask what he meant. They laughed it off. The back room was the nicest one. Big window facing the neem tree, view of the empty plot, quietest spot in the house. They made it their bedroom. The first month was blissful. No upstairs neighbors, no traffic noise, just crickets and distant highway sounds at night. Then the scratching started. At exactly 1:11 a.m. almost every night, something would scratch lightly at their bedroom window. Not like a branch in the wind. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Pause. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The first time, Naveen opened the curtain, half annoyed. Nothing. Just the neem tree, unmoving. The empty plot, silvered by moonlight. Thatha's house, dark except for a faint glow in one back window. The second time, he went outside with a torch, circled the house. No animal tracks. No low branches near the glass. The window was too high for a casual passerby to reach, and the road ended at their gate. The third time, he tried to ignore it. His wife couldn't. "It's like nails," she whispered one night, covers clutched under her chin. Short nails, right on the glass. Counting. On the 10th night, the scratching changed. It moved, slowly, from one edge of the window to the other, as if whoever was making it were dragging their hand across, searching for a way in. Naveen snapped. The next morning, he went to Thatha's gate and called out. No answer. He walked around and peered through a crack in the boundary wall. Thatha was in his backyard, sitting on a plastic chair under the neem tree, facing their house. His eyes were open but unfocused, lips moving silently. "Uncle?" Naveen called. "Are you okay?" The old man's gaze sharpened for a second, locking onto him. "You stayed in the back room," he said. "Not a question." "It's the bedroom," Naveen said, forcing a laugh. "Why? Is there some problem? Some animal?" Thatha's eyes slid past him to the window. "It likes the last house," he murmured. "The last room. The last bed. Every few years, someone new comes. They don't listen. It remembers." "Remembers what?" Naveen asked. Instead of answering, the old man lifted his right hand. The fingernails were worn down to the quick, ridged and broken. The skin around them was thick and shiny, as if from years of friction. Naveen's stomach turned. You're the one. I hear it," Thatha said quietly. "I try to answer before it starts. Sometimes it stops. Sometimes it doesn't. You should move your bed. Don't give it your backs. It hates when people forget it died there." "Who died?" Naveen whispered. But the old man's eyes had gone unfocused again. His hand dropped. He began humming under his breath, an old lullaby. That evening, Naveen did something his wife mocked at first and then, reluctantly, helped with. They shifted their bed to the front room. The back bedroom became a storage space. They kept the window there shut, curtain drawn. The scratching didn't stop. But after that, it started on the wall where their bed had been, not the window. Softer, less insistent. Like someone waking up in the wrong place and finding no one there. A month later, they woke to flashing lights outside. An ambulance. Police. Crowd at Thatha's gate. He'd been found in his backyard, under the neem tree. Heart stopped, they said. Peaceful. Hands curled, nails embedded in the arms of his plastic chair, as if he'd been holding on very tightly to something no one else could see. "The scratching hasn't stopped entirely," Naveen told me. "Some nights it's loud," he wrote. "Some nights it's just there, like a memory at the edge of hearing. But we never sleep in that room. We never turn our backs to that wall. If you're home right now, think about your own neighbors. The helpful uncle with spare keys. The friendly couple upstairs. The family with the always closed storeroom. The quiet teacher at the window. The old man who warned you once and then never again. We like to believe that danger is something that comes from far away, a stranger on the road, a noise in a distant alley. These 5 people will tell you that sometimes the scariest things don't break into your home. They're already inside the building.